Hi, I'm Ryan Castle. Welcome to the Level 10 Leaders Podcast. We're going to be breaking down the systems, habits, and mindset shifts used by EOS leaders to crush their growth goals and achieve Level 10 success. If you're a visionary, integrator, or leader of a fast-growing team, this podcast is going to get you to 100% strong. Hit subscribe, stay tuned, and let's get started on the journey to learn, lead, and level up. Dr Mike Ashby, co-founder of Level 10 Leaders. Great to have you on the podcast.
Ryan Castle, co-founder of Level 10 Leaders. Great to be on your podcast.
Wow, we sound like a great pair for this. Now let's jump immediately from joviality. Is that a word?
Yeah, but it's near enough. Jovial.
Near enough. Jovial. Let's go from being jovial to talking about something very serious, which is execution. Now we're not going to talk about the guillotine or firing squad one, but one that you've been doing some incredible deep research and analysis around. Maybe if we could frame this up for our audience right out of the bat. When you hear a senior leader go, execution is our issue, what do you find them normally thinking about or pointing to?
It's the drift. We call it the drift between what they say they are going to do, their strategic plan, their strategic intention, and what actually happens. And they call it execution because it's the executive function. Make it happen, right? But it doesn't. They don't make it happen. Instead, they get this kind of, it's just a drift. There's nothing, there's a whole bunch of external issues that might impact on one of your strategic objectives. Step back a bit. COO, organization, they've got 5 kind of pillars to their strategy. A couple of those might be externally influenced, and a couple of them, like operational excellence, is often in there, and that's to do with process improvement. And then there'll probably be a piece about capability, and there'll probably be a piece about technology adoption or agility or something along those lines, particularly at the moment with AI looming so large. So they've got those 5 things, and in terms of what impacts on execution, on getting the results that you intended, well, the first 2, external, that could be the market, right? But then you've got these other 3, and we have great plans. We have great possibilities for what this might look like. But year on year, there's this gap between what we intend to do and what we actually do. And that's what people mean when they talk about execution. It's the thing that doesn't happen at the level that it needs to happen.
And Mike, you spent a good part of your career as a consultant. You delivered, I'm sure, some incredible strategy papers and got paid very, very handsomely for those beautiful pieces of work. In your experience, how often was failure to deliver the outcome stated on the plan a result of the strategy itself not being correct or viable versus the ability for the organization to actually go and execute it?
We'll never know, because it was called, the service line internally was called strategic plan, strategic plan on the shelf, because that's where most of them ended up. And that's a fundamental problem with a strategic plan. You get right there, right from the start. When you do the big launch and you show the 5 pillars of joy, and people are like, yeah, this is great, yeah. And then it gets put into the bottom drawer or on the G drive somewhere or in the clouds, lost and never kind of referenced. And this is, it's the execution problem is translating the idea to executable chunks, and that's what doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen because people get caught up in the whirlwind. They do the big offsite. They come back all pumped and joyous, and then they've got their job to do. They've got their core job to do, and that's 100% of what they do because they're already busy. Actually, what we should call it is inertia. Inertia is what stops people from executing. Inertia is what bogs people down in what they've always done, instead of taking the steps to make change happen, because that's really what you're talking about. Execution of a strategic plan is doing things differently. Inertia is just doing the same stuff. And people are busy in their inertia. They are, it's very familiar to them, and it takes a lot of effort to get out of there and get their heads into, okay, what is the immediate step I need to take with operational excellence. We want to improve our cycle time on this. We want to get more stuff out the door, more shit out the door, as our old friend used to say. The first step is to document the process. Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. And the weeks go by and nothing happens, or they do a bit of it and then it stops. I think the literature would say 75% of strategic initiatives fail to deliver on the promise in the plan. And I'm quite surprised it's that low, actually. But that's probably what separates the really good organisations from the also-rans, is that there are a quarter of those businesses actually executing on their plan. They probably had a very small, very focused plan.
It's a very, very good place to start. A strategic plan that is executable is a good place to start as a way to succeed. Mike, in the organisations you've coached, you've worked with many of them, what do you see as the early warning signs of a execution or a plan that's about to sail off into drift mode?
Well, this is the hard thing. It's hard to observe nothing happening. It's crickets. You go out there and you want to improve your cycle time, and then nothing happens. And you're just, you don't really watch for nothing happening. You watch for events and activities and patterns and stuff like that. And particularly if you don't have any mechanism, and I suppose a lot of people would use things like Asana and things like that, and break down the plan, and they should be able to see from that when deadlines are being missed. But that's the first thing you would look for, is deadlines being missed, not once, but serially. That is the first thing you'd look for. And then you'd look for who's accountable, and do they have the capacity to make this change? Do they have the capability? And have they built a team around them? So, you'd actually look at the deliverability of the plan. One of the big problems with a lot of strategies, and it's a fundamental issue for execution, is that they overestimate the capability on the ground. The plan is built on the assumption of perfect conditions, which is not the reality on the ground at all. So too many strategic plans fail to take account of the conditions on the ground.
And I think we've seen very good business operating systems like EOS and others that look to tackle components of this challenge, is they do a good job of breaking the annual plan down into rocks and quarterly goals, and then KPIs to measure. And yet, even with all of that great planning, we still see failure to execute, and that often will look like lots of red on your scoreboard. It will look like getting to the end of the quarter and a whole lot of rocks not being delivered in full. So even with those great planning tools around us, we're still seeing execution failure. Do you observe that this is mostly a senior leadership issue? Is senior leadership doing something wrong? Is it something else or a different layer in the organization where these plans are getting lost? What are you seeing there?
I think senior leadership has to take responsibility for it, or at least accountability, but they're not really responsible for delivering the plan. And I think that they might have to take accountability. I'm not sure they do, but they're not also holding their people to account for performance against the plan. And that's because nobody's doing the work of chunking this down into the smaller steps. You're right. These business operating systems are great at the quarterly rocks and kind of the milestones and all of that stuff. But execution is done daily. That's a really important thing. Execution happens in daily actions and activities and steps. Execution happens, the long mile to the goal is a series of steps. And that's the bit that often gets lost. People kind of know that, and good people will make that progress for themselves, but there are no systems. It's not visible that those steps are either are or are not being taken, especially if they're not being taken. They just get lost in the kind of quarterly goal or the weekly scorecard or whatever, instead of some system for monitoring the daily activities of people. Because you know what it's like. You start on Monday, you got your plan, you're going to do this, this, and this by the end of the week, and suddenly it's Friday, none of that's happened, and your scorecard looks there, right? Or it might look okay because you've kind of, something good has happened without you having to do anything about it. But it's the inertia piece for individuals who are going, I got to get this done. I've got to get that done. I've always got to get this done. And then you ask them to do something over and above that, and they go, yeah, but I don't know how to do that, or I'm going to have to get this, and this organized before I can make that happen. And, here's my urgent thing that I've got to get done right now. So it gets lost in the whirlwind. The important gets lost in the urgent. People don't translate those priorities down to what do I do right now?
And what's the effect on the organisation when this is a recurring cycle of great plans, busy in the whirlwind? What are we seeing the cost of the organisation? I guess the first thing would be, what do you see with senior leaders, kind of time, energy, and trusting their team? What happens there?
Well, that's a really interesting one. I suspect that COOs and CEOs just have this quiet desperation and this kind of resignation or fatalism that inertia is always with us. It's always going to be here. We don't have any that's how life is, right? So, yes, it's frustrating because they're usually the architects of the plan, and yet it doesn't happen, and they kind of don't expect it to happen. It's actually solvable. But they put up with it. I talk to them and they say, yeah, we kind of got a little bit of the way towards it, but not really far enough. And, but, kind of, what do you expect sort of thing. So I don't know if people, my good friend Ken DeWitt tells the story of the farmer, the commercial traveller wandering up to a farmhouse, and he's chatting away to the farmer, and there's the dog sitting there going, squirming on something. It's kind of, what's wrong with your dog? Oh, don't worry about him. Well, what's wrong with him? He seems uncomfortable. Well, yeah, it's because he's lying on a nail. And the guy said, well, why doesn't he move? And he said, well, it doesn't hurt enough yet. And that, I think, is what happens to why organisations put up with this failure to execute, because they just accept it as a given and that it just doesn't hurt enough. It's costing trillions of dollars across the economy. It's costing billions of dollars to organisations, millions, hundreds of thousands. Some estimates put it as high as 40%. 40% of turnover is being missed through lack of productivity, lack of change, lack of transformation. And this becomes, forget about some kind of theoretical number that's contrived from somewhere. 9 out of 10 COOs are saying we have to change our business model in the next 3 years because of AI. And 1 out of 10 of them are saying we're underway. And given this track record of kind of failure to execute, you would have to think that there are a lot of organisations, a lot of senior execs who are or should be starting to get really, really concerned about their ability to execute transformation in the face of this existential threat. That was a long way of answering that question, wasn't it?
And all valid insights. And I think whilst AI is the term that's obviously very popular right now, we've seen technology projects fail time and time and time again, decade after decade after decade, right? Regardless of whatever the technology is evolving. And because so many of them come back to this, you're asking a organization to implement massive change. And you also want the organization to keep delivering all the things they're doing right now. And now we want to go to the managers and say, hey, can you keep the productivity at the level you've got it right now? But now can you start spending a huge portion of your time also implementing this? You're going to have to undo everything, redo everything. And so many of those managers are just brutally ill-equipped to deal with barely even running today's business, let alone trying to transform it into tomorrow's. And I think we observe that again and again. What have you seen be the critical point where an organization goes, we just have to get better at this? We've missed milestones and rocks, time and time again. That cycle time improvement that we discussed at the strategic offsite was going to deliver another $15 million of margin to us. We're missing it. It all made sense at the time, but we haven't got there. What tends to be the catalyst for them to go, we've got to take a different approach here?
Sometimes it happens in two ways, really. It happens with an external shock, that something changes in their market and they change or die. That's quite useful. It really, as they say, nothing focuses the mind like the prospect of the gallows in the morning. And then the other one that happens is a new CE comes in and has a vision for the business which far exceeds the performance to date and the capability. And then they have to ask the question, well, how are we going to get there? So that raises a good question. We've got 3 years to double our business or whatever it is for a medium-sized organisation. That's a big hike. And that's good because that makes them go away and say, okay, we can't get there from here. What do we need to do to change? And then they'll ask the question. And then they'll go to transformation. Right, we're going to have a transformation project. We're going to, restructure the organisation. We're going to digitize. We're going to kind of AIize. We're going to digitize. And so it begins. And then there's this massive wheel spinning as organisations try to, adjust to this sudden shake in one of those little snow things.
Snow globe?
Snow globes, yeah. Yeah, so they're struggling to adjust to this change in the snow globe, and they're worried about their job, and they're worried about other people's jobs and what are they meant to be doing now, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people make the mistake of trying to do this at a macro level, at a kind of organisational level, give it a bloody good shake. Well, and that's has some value, but in the end, execution is a daily habit. And you're not building a daily habit when you're changing people's worlds upside down. You might change the way they think. You might force them to be more customer focused. You might, etc. Or more importantly, you might take 20% out in costs. But if you want to achieve your strategy, a repositioning in the marketplace, a new capability, then you have to make a daily habit of execution. The daily habit in anything is everything. The daily habit in any change is everything. Forget transformation. Just go back to my 5 strategic pillars and my 3, my operational excellence and my, greater customer focus and my cost efficiency piece, right? The things that are going to make all that happen are the daily habits of an activity that relates to that priority, that relates to that outcome. It's that simple, really. It's the old framework: inputs, process, outputs, results. So people doing things that are a bit different to create a different output, which will result in a different outcome. And that's all it is, but it's daily.
And
people
like I was talking to a chief executive myself last week, and we got to a good old 80-20 principle, Pareto analysis. And he's like, I know I could unlock greatness in this organization if I just had all of my people focused on the 20% of the things that deliver 80% of the value. And if I had them executing on that stuff each day, his take was we'd move the business forward massively. We would be less busy and less stressed because we'd have people not trying to do everything and be much, much more focused. And he said, if I could just have visibility of that across my organization, are my people working on the right things that will deliver value, and are they executing them each day? It was like that would be nirvana for him.
Yeah.
So
100% right. That is the daily habit expressed exactly right. And I can tell them right now that the reality is that people are not doing the things that matter. They are not working on the 20%. They're working on the 80% that they always have worked on. And they get to the end of the day and they've been busy and they're stressed with it because there's more coming. There's another fire about to kind of start somewhere in a rubbish tin. That's their day. So his point about visibility is very interesting. And it is as simple as being able to capture the daily activities that taken together are going to move the needle in that person's area and that one and that one and that one. And then the collective is what moves the whole organisation. But, to get to that, you've got to have the capacity and the capability in the first place. And you have to assume that people are very good at what they do right now, but they need to be upskilled to do the rest of this stuff. And they need to create, my kind of take on it is everything in the way an organization runs is touched by management. Management is the critical lever. If you don't have a capable management team, you can yank on that lever as hard as you like, it's not going to move. Your organization's not going to move. And the quality of management comes down to your willingness to upskill them so that you can create time and space. If they've got time and space, they can work on their team. They can work on the things that matter most, the 20% that's going to deliver 80% of the value. So, it's kind of root cause. Why don't people do the stuff that I want them to? Well, they're too busy. They don't have time. They don't have the headspace. How about if we fix the time and headspace problem? Oh, no, just more shit. No, right? Not if you're clear about these are the things that you need to be working on. Okay, but how will we know they're doing them? Another great question. Find a way to capture what they're working on and not working on, and then you'll see what's really going on with your momentum. So first you have to upskill them so that they can manage themselves and their time better. They have to manage other people better, and that means delegation, which means, that's amplification, multiplication, leverage, call it what you will. It's the big amplifier, right? And then you need that, and to do that, they need to communicate well, and they need to have difficult conversations, and they need all those management basics to start with. And then in the court, they need to be reminded of that, because no matter how good the training is or the upskilling, they're going to forget. It's, the best one, but your vast majority, you're kind of average, they will, and your bottom feeders never learn to do all, so don't even know why they're in business. If you want that average group to get better, you have to have a system for reminding them, like I have and you have, because you know me, mate, I forget everything, right? And that's why I've been so disciplined about having electronic or paper-based. I had the Franklin Day Runner, 30 years ago, to try and keep it in front of me what I'm meant to be doing and what the most important stuff is. And, the 3 rocks. What am I going to do today to make progress on this rock? So when you get visibility of that, when people, A, are reminded, and B, know that their performance can be seen, they will do it. So there's a little bit of kind of help them, but there's a little bit of kind of, well, this is what you're accountable for, and we can see this accountability. So in a way, another word that we need to use in this whole area of execution is failure to hold people to account. That's one of the great glaring omissions, and it's because we're not clear about what they're being held to account for. We don't have visibility on what we want to hold them to account to, and we don't have the skills to hold them to account. We don't have that kind of difficult conversation skill. So that's the combination: visibility, and then setting a higher standard and holding people to account.
Yeah. And my observation is that most people are trying to do a really good job. So the accountability bit is not about getting the whip out and whipping the people harder, going just work harder, just work harder. That's not the solution, because people are already trying hard. They're already working significant hours. They're trying to get better. What they're lacking is firstly the skills. So for personal accountability, some of them lack the skills. So as you were talking about freeing time and space, of course, Andrew Cridge from Scion, one of our clients, came to mind, who said after just that one component of our course, his number of hours in meetings per week went from 22 hours to 10 hours. He was immediately saving 12 hours a week, which he could then use to deliver value. So you got to give them the skills. How do I figure out which of the 20 hours of meetings I should drop and not be a part of? And how can I get a summary rather than sitting in the room? These kind of skills that people learn. And then the thing that I think we all are challenged by now is that we have to-dos or tasks coming at us from 100 different angles. Just in our own organization, we have them in our CRM, we have them in Asana, our project management tool, we have them in Teams, we have them coming via email, we have them in text conversations, we have them in chat conversations. So actually just the function to go, I'm going to take a pause, core to our programs, pause, observe, and choose. I am going to have to look across all of those different systems and say, for today, what are the 3 that I could work on that will move the needle? Game changer. Absolute game changer if you can get people doing that. And then if they've got the capability and the skills and they've got the focus now on what they're going to do, and they can get constant coaching and support around that, we're onto a winner with the organization executing. Because as you say, we talk about organization execution, but it's actually individual execution in the moment, in the workflow that really, really matters.
Yeah, and it's daily. The daily habit of execution is what it's about. Now, your CEO that you mentioned earlier, hopefully, they've got really clear about the rocks, and that the exec team have got really clear about how those rocks translate for the individual managers of their teams, so that they're people at tier 3 and tier 4, they're going, so these are the 3 outcomes I'm trying to work towards this month or this quarter, and what do I need to do today? Whether it's kind of, review a single process, or whether it's review supplier costs with this particular element of the supply chain, whatever it is, that they are stepping away from, that they know that their behaviours and activities are visible, and they go, right, better get that done today because I know the boss is going to be looking at it. That's accountability. That is exactly what accountability looks like. Nothing brutal about it. This is what the boss wants. And, so much of where people go wrong is expectations aren't clear. We know, it's so hard to hold somebody to account if you're not crystal clear about the expectations. So make those expectations crystal clear. The particular behaviours and the managers have to work this out for themselves, but they're smart and they're capable. It's just that they don't have time. So give them the skills to create time and headspace. They will work out what needs to be done on a daily basis. Give them the system that captures that and is visible to exec. Then you'll see the whole organisation move. Guide them along the way when they get stuck.
And a good leader will be connecting the strategic plan, which they have been able to communicate to the manager and to the team, so they know when they're being asked or being held accountable for something, they understand the why, not just the what, but why are we doing this, which is super valuable. Okay.
Which just wraps
so Mike, if we were to kind of pull this together, what are I've heard you mention 3 core components that would really help fix execution. Just summarize those 3 components for me and what each does.
I don't think anything happens until you have managers who have the time and headspace. So I think you've got to upskill them in terms of how they manage themselves, how they manage other people, how they manage teams, so that they can create that time and headspace to give to the strategic imperatives, the objectives, the kind of needle movers. Then I think you've got to give them help in the daily flow. You've got to give them that kind of coaching about, because for a lot of people, and it should be a little bit this way, where it says, I've got to do this thing, but I'm not quite sure how to do it. And some of those things people will use chat AI for the kind of, and other AI forms to work out the technicals. But it's the how do I manage myself and how do I manage my team and how do I manage others? That's where guidance is needed. And AI coaching now is offering tremendous insight around that. What it's doing is breaking that inertia, because it says, here's your next step. When I don't want to have a difficult conversation, it's not because I don't know how. It's I don't want to. And it's sort of, you go to, an AI coach, the Dr Mike AI coach, and one of the things that we've done in that is 100% about giving people permission and courage in the moment. Give them permission, give them clarity, and then give them the courage to act. And that's, the kind of one specific thing that you've got to do. Book the call, start the conversation, whatever it is. And then I think, and vitally important, is the visibility of that daily habit of execution, making that visible to the managers who are responsible and accountable for it, but also ensuring that their managers have visibility on that. So what you're doing is you're creating a higher standard of accountability and holding people to account for it. And then that's visible also at the macro level, so that executive can see, well, where are we going too slow? What's going on? Oh, it's lack of resource. It's not a kind of come down and kind of whip people some more. It's, this is under-resourced, or we've got systems issues here, or we've got budget issues, whatever it might be. They're the executive decisions. So the other three things I think is upskilling, is coaching, and is an accountability system, measuring and monitoring that daily habit of execution.
Brilliant. And what we've also seen from the research is many organizations are starting AI initiatives, but very few of them are providing real value to the organization. We've proven with our AI coaching models that are dedicated and trained specifically to that, so not just generic AI. It's such an excellent use of AI technology, being able to give people that in workflow right here in the moment, give me some help around this managerial issue that I'm facing, rather than going, I've got a coaching session, but it's 2 or 3 weeks away and I must make a note to try and talk about it then. We think about execution drift. If that thing is not being tackled today and we're waiting another 3 weeks, there's just another 3 weeks of drift before that thing gets addressed.
Chuck in one more element around that, which is we haven't really talked about. Sort of implicit in what we're talking about is that this change is a kind of static thing. It's not. Actually, all organizations today are facing ongoing change, permanent change, and having to reinvent themselves constantly. So the same thing applies. If you don't have a way of continuing to develop your managers, you will hit inertia. So, what goes on in that AI coach is it's a really important piece of having upskilled them to maintain their growth, to maintain a continuous development so that they are able to deal with bigger problems and develop greater skills. But you want their development as managers to be going upward and to the right so that they're in a position to continue to adapt, continue to not only be resilient, but actually to be genuinely agile, to adapt to the changes in the environment and take advantage of them. That's a winning organisation.
Indeed. Now, Mike, we might have a number of people listening to the podcast that are going, wow, a lot of this kind of resonates for me, but how do I figure out whether my organisation has really got an execution drift problem or not? You've done some incredible work helping to build a diagnostic that executives can use to look at their organisation. Only takes them 2 or 3 minutes to do that. They'll get an immediate score around where the execution strength lies. Provide some clarity on who should take that diagnostic and kind of what can they expect from it.
I think all COOs and operations managers, I think more widely, there's a lot of transformation going on, a lot of people thinking about transformation. Chief people officers are thinking about that stuff. They need to be thinking about it, not in the context of transforming culture, because that's the end of the gig. It's how do we change more quickly and more effectively as an organization? And if you can't execute on a bold strategic plan, then, you're wasting your time. So I think chief HR officers, even, at tier 3, if you've got a bunch of managers who report to you, taking the quiz will help you identify how you can get more out of your team. And actually, for those kind of top 10% managers who've just got, who've got just a bunch of direct reports, I think will provide really good insights for them too, as to how to get more out of their team, which is always the big question. And it is the answer to the execution drift is get more out of the team on the ground.
So if execution matters to your strategy this year, I highly encourage you to take the execution strength diagnostic that we have built. You can find that at lvl10.us/execution. So level 10 shortened lvl10.us/execution. And we'll also put that in the show notes so people can access it directly there. Hey, Mike, fantastic conversation today. This is going to be a deep theme for us this year because we continue to hear from our clients that this is something they want to tackle and want to solve. So this won't be the only episode on this topic, and look forward to sharing more insights from our clients and from yourself.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface, and this is a really, really important thing for all organizations.
Thanks, Mike.
Cheers, Ryan. See ya.
Disclaimer: Level 10 Leaders is an independent podcast and leadership development platform. It is not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by EOS Worldwide LLC. EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, Level 10 Meeting, and related trademarks are trademarks of EOS worldwide and are used here for informational purposes only. Thanks for tuning in to Level 10 Leaders. If today's episode hit home, here's what you need to do. Take the LMA quiz. Go to lvl10.us/LMA. It's fast and reveals what's holding you back. Hit subscribe and share this with one person who needs to break through the ceiling and crush their growth goals. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll show you exactly how to level up to level 10.